Because, you know, and you know, otherwise, and I just tell them, why else would you not watch lesbian porn when you watch pornography?
Right.
You don't.
Yeah.
You always
well,
watch
it's the entree. It's the entree.
You watch gangbang these
right.
days, which is like 4 guys fucking a woman, because they long so much for this belonging to the gang, share an intimate experience with
right.
each other. And the gangbang probably was closely related to original ritual sex, where a woman could really have 4 men if she wanted to, and 4 men could fuck a woman together. It's actually incredibly natural. It's there. Right. But we are so distorted. We're so far away from that. With the nuclear family ideal and the romantic ideal, you should meet your partner for life at a young age, and you should stay with that partner forever. You should not look anywhere else. Right. So everything should be so tamed and castrated that there's no freedom left in it. And I mean, we did burst out of that in the 1960s, some 50 years ago. We're still dealing how we're going to arrive at a good place with that, because obviously we did blow up something that was very conformist that didn't work. So the nuclear family idea did not work, certainly not for everybody, not for most people, because it was forced on us only about 100 years before that. It has nothing to do with human sexuality. Right. But the problem is sexuality, number one, is never harmonious, never balanced. That's exactly what it's attracted to. We're attracted to the ambivalence of the whole thing. But that's the first thing they have to teach people. The second thing is that the way we perceive sexuality and sex in our culture has been fucked up. So we need to liberate it. We need to experiment way more than we used to. But to be able to do that, when you do something as important to you and as difficult to you, you need to build from some kind of self-confidence. So how do you work with men and women who walk through the door at the TNT to build self-confidence? How do you do that?
Great question. I mean, I think, you know, they're all very risky practices. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, you can walk up the mountain very safely, or you can go straight up the summit, and, you know, you can fall and really hurt yourself. To do those sort of practice, you need quite a strong, stable, you know, relationship if you're going to do that. Yeah. You know, we always say, how do you deal with that reality that you're attracted to other people? Do you take a more kind of restrictive approach and like, okay, just don't look at other people, just pretend I'm not attracted to other people, and, you know, kind of, you know, control each other. I won't if you won't, and that's one thing that works for, you know, some people. Long term though, you know, what happened, how do you deal with those attractions? How do you, because, you know, I'm not like a big scholar, having read, you know, thousands of books and things, but I do ask nearly everyone I meet, and all the students and people come to our workshop, I say, you know, what do you think about? And a big one for the women is like the gangbang. Right, is to be penetrated by a lot of the masculine. Now,
and for the men too.
Right, and for the men too. Yeah, high five, you know.
They long for it.
Right.
To share the sexual experience with other men.
Right, without competing. Without competing. Right.
That's a total turn off for women. It's a total turn off.
So why is it such an insult to call a woman a slut? Yeah. That's why we said there's an absolute legitimate place for the divine slut, that she can be, you know, have many men if she has that fantasy, and a lot of women do. I mean, you know, and then if they don't ever live that out, then it can get even bigger, you know, into the kind of the rape fantasy. You know, it gets, there is a genuine longing, I think, in many women. If they don't, fine, but if they do, how do you do that in a safe way? So we have certain guidelines and recommendations that if people want to work with that. The big one, of course, is getting over shame, but the second one is getting over jealousy. You know, because if you're going to, you know, fulfill some of your fantasies, not many people masturbate to monogamy. You know, oh, the same genitals for the next 30 years. You know, not many people do that. So then how do you deal with that, you know, scary emotion of jealousy? I might lose my partner. So one of the things we have, you know, 10 sort of rough guidelines or recommendations that I found when I was doing that practice, what worked, and some of them are, I can't remember all 10 right off the top of my head, but a lot of them is, you know, talk about it with your partner, and do it when you're in a good space, and say, okay, I would have this fantasy of being with someone else. Would that work with you? And quite often it does. You know, they say, oh yes, we'd like to have another woman in our bed, for example. Okay, then you go out together and you go and find, you know, a woman that you both like, and you invite her in, you communicate, and there's something, I think, you know, a lot of people say this might break up my relationship, right? But I think there's something so beautiful about, you know, yes, I had sex with that other person, and it was great, it was wonderful, but it's you I want long term. Yes. It's you that I love.
Yes.
You know, And we often say, it's...
And if your relationship couldn't stand that test anyway, what was it worth?
How strong was it anyway?
Yeah.
Was it really meant to be? And, then you also, like, to bring another man into the bed. That's often even a little bit more scary. A lot of guys have the fantasy for 2 women. A lot of women have the fantasy for 2 women. But to bring another guy, and then how do you not compete? How do you serve the woman? How do you stay respectful? And once I think, we have a level 3 workshop, which after they've had all the theory, clothes on, very safe, structured, learning how to say no, not doing any compromising and feeling you're forced in any situation, and learning that. And they actually get graded by the teachers, by the workshop facilitators. Is this person ready? Are they strong enough to go to level 2? And then they take the clothes off, and then they can do, all the in the body work, the vaginal de-armoring for the women, and also for women in the anus if they want, or the men if they want, and the cock work stuff. And then if they're sort of ready for that, then finally the 3rd workshop is, okay, this is for me this changed everything, is if you really spell out what you're really fantasizing about, and we get people to write up their fantasies on the board, and it's just like gangbang, to be, have a bisexual encounter, to have the,
it's all reflecting outside society, and
right.
how really oppressed or suppressed,
and how
still
scary
are.
that it is, right?
Yeah, it's weird.
So then they write them up on the board.
That's where it all comes out.
Right.
That's where it all comes
yeah,
out.
and you see there's basically only 5 or 6 main sort of, I want to be dominated, I want to be submissive, there's not a huge amount of variation. It's just things that are oppressed by society.
Yeah.
So people write it up on the board, and then a woman says, I've had this fantasy for a long time to have like 5 men, for example. So then what we do is, once they've all written their fantasies up on the board, then what they do is they say, forget about me trying to get. What I'm going to focus on, how do I give? Which is a very tantric practice. How do I serve? And then you go, okay, that woman over there wants to have a gangbang, and would you be willing to do that? And you say, yeah, all right, would. And then 5 guys come over to the woman and say, oh, we heard you wanted to, have a gangbang. Are us 5 guys suitable? Do you like us? How would you like it done? Let's set a code word with you, like apple tree, to stop it if you ever feel unsafe or whatever. And how would you like it? And it's interesting that once the woman feels respected, loved, cared for, with that she's in control, that she has clearly defined her boundaries, she knows she can exercise that at any time. It's interesting how often they really want to be sort of taken, quite often. They do want it a little bit scary, a little edgy. So, and then the guys will say, okay, well, all right. And when I first, learned that women often want to be taken a little bit, to really be ravished, I was like, really, women want that? I thought they just want to be sweet and nice and kind and, soft and gentle all the time. But there is, that longing in a lot of women. Yeah. Why not? And then you work out how to actually serve that. But the other one is the jealousy practice. So we have, one of the things is to actually to watch your partner be sexual with someone else. That's why we say invite the other person in your bed, because there's something about really communicating with your partner when you're being sexual with someone else. And often after 5 minutes, people go like, what was the big deal about?
Yeah.
It was just such a huge thing in my head, but now I feel like much more love and connected with my partner now. We're kind of horning together on it. We can, replay that even when we're alone, and it builds a much deeper trust with people. It's a scary practice. It's a very advanced practice, but it does seem to really often bring people much closer.
It's incredibly important because it deals with ownership and everything else in your life too. Right. So it's like you're scared of losing things, so you hang on to them and you claim them in a way you wouldn't have to, because you could actually share them. Value something with somebody, but you think it has to be all yours. To me, it's a very infantile reaction, almost traumatically infantile. It's just like, if I don't possess this, if it isn't mine, exclusively mine, it's not mine at all. Yeah. Right? And this is something we need to foster people to get out of. So we don't end up with that deadlock all the time, especially not with sexuality.
I would say that is the main fear of people that come to our workshops. They say, do I have to, be having sex with other people? No. Absolutely not. I mean, I always say, monogamy is, sex with love is way better than just sex. If you really connect in love with that person. You can't do that if you're just constantly changing partners all the time. If you never have long-term relationship, maybe you've got an intimacy fear. Yeah. So, once you're sort of with that person, of course, and you're really in love with them, it's often you're not interested in other people. But that may only last for some period of time, and after a while, it's like, maybe we could spice things up a little bit. So we distinguish between love-based monogamy, which is natural and you're totally in love with each other and you're not really interested in other people. That's great.
Yeah.
But the fear-based monogamy, where I don't want to have sex with you anymore because I'm kind of not interested. We've had children and now I'm not so interested. But you sure as fuck can't have sex with anyone else because I love you too much. I mean, what kind of logic is that?
Yeah.
I always say, if you...
It's not love to begin with.
No, because, surely unconditional love is if you really love someone, you want them to be happy.
Yes.
You don't tell your best friend,
If you love somebody, set them free.
Right. You don't say your best friend, you can have sex with this person, but you can't have sex with that person or that person. You don't control your best friend like that. Why is it just because we are coupled together with our genitals that all of a sudden I have the right to tell you how you live?
No, it's a small-mindedness, and since you're working with expansion, you're also working with building self-confidence. So the more self-confidence people have, genuine self-confidence, the more they can tolerate their partner, and also be more adventurous, and the more they both gain from it.
Right, and that's...
So you work with that constantly. This can, of course, be really scary to people out there because they're told from contemporary society, from the outside world, that they should really try to hang on to something because they're told all the time we live in a very competitive world.
Right.
Where just grabbing and owning and having property of some kind is the only way to secure your access to it.
Right.
And we think of that of relationships too, which is a terrible mistake.
And that's where
what if you foster your children that way?
Right.
Horrible.
I know.
Horrible.
Yeah.